If you feel dumb reading the same thing again and again, nothing actually ever going in, well then you're in the right place, because I was feeling that exact same way for a very long time. And despite there being hundreds of study videos out there, not one showed me exactly what to do in a realistic study session in real time. So that's what we're gonna do in this series. My name is Zain Asif, I'm a third year medical student at the University of Manchester, and this is the very first video of the highly requested live studying series. And today's live tutorial is on creating mind maps, which is the very first thing I do as soon as I start studying a new topic. Let me explain why and show you how. Remember, this is a practical video where it's useless for you to just sit back and relax. So your first practical action is to grab a pen and a paper and follow along with a topic of your own. You should really pause with each step and do this with your own topic, because that is the only way you will learn and transform your way of studying, by actually doing it with me and then realizing how much of a big difference it makes. The reason you're studying inefficiently is because you're missing out on the first most important step of the learning process. You're doing things in the wrong order. Because imagine, for example, you're in a cash grab machine where there's paper money all around you, you're in this tube that's blowing money everywhere, and you're trying to grab at one note and then the next thing. And then as soon as you try to grab something else, that old note falls from your hand. In the process of trying to grab as much money around you, you start to let go of the old money as you grab the new stuff. And at the end, you're practically left with nothing. It's not a perfect analogy, but that's what your brain is doing when you're learning. You're just grabbing at pieces of information all around you, hoping to hold onto them, but as soon as you start to learn the next thing, you forget the old stuff. So instead of reading through concepts one by one and forgetting half of them, and then afterwards trying to make sense of all of it and try and connect it together, why not first start by making sense of how all the basic concepts work and how they connect together? And then you start to read through the topic in the coming hours, one by one, going through the concepts. But the difference then will be is that there's something for all this new information that you're learning, all these details, to attach to in your head. And that's what creating an initial mind map of the topic helps with. It's just the initial structure for the whole topic with the important concepts on it. And the end result is that it speeds up how quickly you understand, how much you remember. It practically speeds up every subsequent part of the learning process. And it doesn't even take that long, as you'll see me do now. And to show you and prove to you that this actually works, I'm gonna be tackling quite a difficult topic in medicine: shock. Shock is a life-threatening state with a variety of causes, and it basically results in less oxygen getting to the various organs of the body. And it's one of those conditions that's a bit confusing to grasp initially, but that's what I need to do for this case today. So the very first step that I do as soon as I tackle a new topic that I know very little about is to skim through all the resources I need to use for this condition, the notes, the chapters, the lectures, generally read and skim through everything. And then side by side, I make a rough list of keywords and concepts on paper or a document. Skimming, by the way, means reading the titles, the bolded sentences, the keywords, the main concepts that are going to be in that chapter. And I've learned that it's important not to do the skimming randomly. I guess that's an important point to mention. I'm skimming through the various resources with the purpose of gathering the bigger concepts within shock. So I'm thinking about the main concepts for me as a clinician, and two, I'm skimming with the purpose of thinking about how the concepts are linked together. How are they similar? How are the different topics different? I already have the general resources for shock opened up, so finally, let's begin, let's get into it, let's make the list. Now, as you can see, I've made that keyword list using some notes online, using some websites. And as you probably saw, I did start to make a list of keywords here quite randomly, just going through the websites and stuff in general, because I didn't understand the topic properly. But as soon as I even got a general sense of it, I realized that the easiest and most sensible way to categorize and organize everything is simply through the types of shock. And by the way, yes, officially the first step is to make the full list, and then the second step is to categorize them. That was the second step that I did simultaneously, which is that while making this list of keywords, take 5 minutes to think about how all these general concepts link together and how you can group them. The whole point of making this full list of keywords is so that you can divide all of the different difficult topics up into the subcategories and categories, and just to make sense of the entire topic before you start drawing out the initial mind map. I've done this here by categorizing the main topics into the 3 different types of shock, because each of them are caused differently, they lead to different investigations and hence different treatments. I didn't want to get bogged down in the details, I didn't put everything on here. Obviously, Obviously, the way you categorize and group topics together is different based on every topic. It even depends on how you think yourself personally. And to be honest, sometimes it's not easy to think about how the topics can be grouped together, how can I make it into topics and subtopics while I'm doing my first skim and making that list. That's why just writing the main bolded words, the list of concepts, and then grouping them after does help form a better base. So yeah, my point is that you don't need to force yourself to combine step 1 and 2 just because I have here, because I realized halfway through step 1 that I can get step 2 done straight away. A quick pause in the video. These take ages to plan and make while I'm studying for all my exams and stuff. Please, could you leave a like, spam the comments, help me out with the algorithm, and let's get back right into it. Anyways, yeah, enough rambling. I spent around, I think, 15 minutes skimming through the whole thing and then making the list. But now let's get into the final step of actually creating that initial mind map, the beef of this video. But remember, this is just me creating a basic layer of knowledge. I've just done 15 minutes of skimming so far. I barely know like the different types and how they work. So I'm going to be doing more skimming while I make the mind map. I might scratch out the entire mind map and start again, depending on if I found a good idea or whatever, but I'll show you all how it works. Let's begin. So this is what we've ended up with here. This is the mind map that I've drawn. Let me walk you through how I did it and how you can do it as well, step by step. See, while watching, I hope you understood that this isn't just me copying my keywords onto the mind map. This all has a clear structure, meaning most people can walk through it and understand what the main concepts are and what the links are generally. And because I've made it this way, they can understand the overall picture of the topic and understand it in a way that it's memorable. And the only reason I was able to do that was because in step 1 and 2, I put in the effort of skimming through the entire topic of shock first. Then I put all of the concepts onto a list into clear groups and categories, which, as we discussed, were the different types of shock. And the most important reason that this mind map is pretty structured and clear to understand is because I took the time to think and understand the way these different concepts, the different types of shock and their different details are related to each other. So the first part of this step is to find a way to link the big main categories through one central idea. And that's why in the next step, I didn't just draw shock, put a circle around it, and put arrows to cardiogenic, hypovolemic, and disruptive shock. I took it a step further and found a memorable way to link these categories together. I realized that the different types of shock here all affect one thing, the blood circulation system, except each one of them affects it in a different way. And that's the key main idea that I used to link the different types of shock together. I ended up doing a pretty rough but memorable drawing of the blood circulation system. And the main thing is that I visually showed how each type of shock affects this circulation system in each of the different ways. Septic shock is caused by the dilation of these vessels. Hypovolemic is a hemorrhage of a vessel. And cardiogenic is issues with the heart or the lungs, and so is the obstructive. The next part of this method, after you've linked the main concepts into one central idea, is to now represent 90% of the subtopics and concepts and processes of the topic that you're learning visually. Now, as you can see, instead of writing out, oh, septic shock is a condition where your BP drops to a dangerously low state, where it's life-threatening, caused by an infection such as fungi, bacteria, whatever. I'm obviously not going to write any of that because making a mind map with a heavy amount of text is something that's never going to be memorable. It's never going to be helpful to me. I know I need to make it as visual and weird as possible. And that's the whole reason we skimmed initially, to understand the general broad ideas in a good enough way that we can easily represent those definitions and the basics that we learn onto this mind map. Only if we draw it out visually will it be clear and memorable enough for us to refer back to and think about when we think about this topic. So here, the infectious pathogen is represented by this spiky ball. That's why an inflammatory response is happening. That's why this vessel is on fire. And then I added a zoomed in drawing of how the endothelial cells get damaged in the blood vessel, how they become leaky, increased amount of cytokines and inflammatory cells come through, vasodilation occurs, leading to low vascular resistance, leading to low perfusion of the organs, and hence septic shock. Shock is quite a simple thing to understand conceptually, but for harder topics, I could have made this even more visually weird and story-like with characters. For example, making the virus evil or something like that, purely because we're much more likely to remember it then. I didn't do that here, but I could have. The next thing I want to emphasize is that while making the mind map, there has to be extreme levels of clarity and flow of ideas. This isn't something I've done super well, I think, but you can visually see what's generally happening with each type of shock. Now I'm going to quickly go through some important tips to add more flow and clarity into a mind map. Now, Number one, I've made the arrows bolder and thicker. I've added more emphasis to the drawings to show the important concepts. Number two, the main concepts of the mind map need to be bigger. I should have made bigger drawings for the middle especially, and for some of the outer concepts. Number three, use color to make it clearer and more memorable. I haven't really done that today, but you can see how much clarity it would add if the hemorrhage here was bright red, if the heart had like a gray outline showing necrosed tissue, if the virus was green. And the fourth, final suggestion I have is to group the topics into sub and sub-sub and sub-sub-sub topics as much as possible. Never just add like 5 different arrows around one concept. You're not going to remember that, and the concepts won't link together in your head at all. So if you do have 5 things around the same one concept all coming off it, then find a better way to group those 5 things. And the way you can do that is by finding clearer relationships between those 5 things and the main concept. So the rule is to not have more than 3 to 4 branches coming off the same topic. While speaking through all of this with you guys, I realized that a lot of my arrows aren't clear. They're going the wrong ways. I should have probably made a lot of the drawings bigger. There should be less text on here. Like literally with septic shock doesn't cause an infection. An infection and all of this causes septic shock, which is caused by the low resistance and the low perfusion. I just did it the wrong way. See, this is quite good that I actually wasn't able to make it perfect, because that shows that me rethinking about the initial idea I have of the topic and clarifying it in this meta-conscientious way is actually helpful. The fact that I'm re-clarifying and finding mistakes and improving this will help me remember it better. At the end of the day, all that matters is that it's reasonably clear, logical, and memorable. Because this is the way my brain is going to be thinking about this topic while studying for the next hour or two. This is my baseline that will speed up every other part of my revision. It doesn't matter if it doesn't make perfect sense or it's completely wrong even. Because if it is wrong, I can think, okay, what in my thought process did I miss? What can I change now to make it make better sense? On the other hand, if the way I'm thinking about it is completely right, then I'll keep building on it. Either way, overall, I'm relating whatever I'm going to be reading now while I study the topic of shock and sepsis and everything that relates to it back to this mind map. I'm linking all this new information I'll be learning about the treatments, the investigations, the diagnostics, everything to do with shock. I'm linking it all back to this initial mind map of the types of shock and what it all means and how it works. Which is why my studying is going to be so efficient now. Like I already have this pre-existing knowledge in my head to link the new information to. Just because I spent a total of like 28-30 minutes making this mind map and priming myself with the topic. There's a lot of experts out there like Justin Sung, Peter J. Brown, they're students, like they make really good videos on how to make efficient, quick mind maps. They probably do it a lot more effectively than I would. I watched their videos a few months ago and that's what got me into this. That's why I started to use them in my study sessions. But to be honest, I always do find it quite hard to replicate something I hear about on YouTube into my studies and use it practically. So I know for sure if I saw this video, I would have benefited so much to learn from a beginner like myself, you know, at that point. Honestly, I really recommend, if you didn't follow along, which most of you probably didn't, just to follow and do this with your own topic, because there's nothing that's deepened my understanding of conditions and clinical knowledge these days than this method. Anyways, let me know what you think about this new series. How can I make these live studying sessions better? How can I improve them for your learning? I definitely want to make one live video for every important part of the studying process, but to get a detailed overview, a step-by-step guide that details every single part of the studying process from as soon as I start tackling a topic all the way to memorizing completely, then check this video out. It is the full study guide that goes through every part of the studying process, how to make it efficient, how to add practical steps in it. You can study a topic while you watch it. It's everything I've learned into one 30-minute video. And I'll also add the playlist of the live videos that will now be coming out here as well. Please do leave a like, spam the comments, help me out with the algorithm. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.